Batman, One Bad Day, The Riddler, issue 1. This is Tom King writing with Mitch Gerads on the art. Obviously, it was hard not to be excited for this particular one shot because of that creative team. This is the Strange Adventures, at least half of the Strange Adventures team, and the
Mr.
Miracle team. So super exciting on that realm, and it is a dense, almost 70-page book, and
it's you feel every page, and it sounds like a slight, but it's not.
No, yes.
This feels the closest. Like, I always get a little bit irritated when people use the term graphic novels to describe comics, because to me, graphic novels are kind of one-shot kind of deals, right? This was a graphic novel, right? This was like a miniseries worth of information in this one shot.
You could easily split this up into 3 single issues and released it that way.
Yeah, and this might be the best Riddler story I've ever I've ever read. So,
well, that's high praise right off the bat. I also thought it was excellent. It's it's kind of, I don't know if they're all going to do this, but I guess the concept here is the idea that, could some of these villains give Batman his one bad day that's bad enough that he might cross the line? And what I like about it doesn't like go into like the bad fan fiction of, what would it be like if Batman actually started killed someone. It leaves it on this very tasteful, like ambiguous kind of, almost like the Killing Joke, where it's like, did he do it? Did he actually cross that line finally?
I hope every one of these have that Grant Morrison moment that he pointed out from his, I think it was on the Kevin Smith podcast, of Joker's life being represented by the light, and then the light goes out at the end, and it's, Alan Moore left it ambiguous if Joker was still around by the end. I hope they kind of all have a moment like that, because the tension by the end is ramped up so much.
Yeah, and this is kind of a masterclass in writing, because like the first few pages, it's this POV from this unknown character who's just leaving work, and he's talking to his wife on the phone about their daughter faking like an illness so she doesn't have to go to her soccer practice. Mm-hmm. And he goes to the elevator, he runs into someone, and it's all POV, and it's him like texting for a cab. Usually gets the train home, but he's getting a cab because he wants to get home quicker to like talk to his daughter. Mm-hmm. And it's the 9-panel grid, right? These first few pages, and 5 panels into the third page, it just goes black. He's looking at his phone. He's texting his wife, and then it just goes black. And then the next page is security camera footage showing you a different angle where he's coming out of his workplace, looking at his phone, and the Riddler just comes up behind him and shoots him in the back of the head. And it is super brutal. And the reason why I think this is so effective is that not only do you get that great sort of suspense of why did it go black? Did he get knocked out? And then you find out, no, he was just murdered in cold blood. Mm-hmm. But it did a good job of making him feel like a character in 3 pages, where I wouldn't say like I cared about him deeply, but like I cared that he died. I felt bad that he got killed.
Yep, I was so bummed out, because I was like, oh, so what's this? Is this guy going to get carjacked or whatever? Did not factor that Riddler was just going to show up and ice him, because I have a very, like, when it came to the Riddler, in my head, he's not a murderer, right? Like, he's a guy that gets off on the puzzles and the riddles, and the whole thing is to show that he's smarter than Batman. And this story plays with that, but this shows a very dark side of Riddler, and King and Gerads really made it work.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, part of this is that he's always like killed people here or there, but like he's kind of like crossed the line now where he's kind of like bored of just playing games with Batman, and now this is the story of how Riddler becomes scary. And I think part of making us sympathize with this innocent person who gets killed, this father and husband who gets killed at the start, is to kind of set up like how severe this is, and it sets you off in that tone. So as the issue progresses, it's like Riddler, he just waits to be arrested, and he gets interrogated by Gordon, and he wants to see Batman. That's all he wants, and he starts mocking Gordon and even tries to claim some responsibility, because even though this is not in continuity in the sense that, this issue is not in continuity, it uses continuity as its history. So it's like, that. So he brings up Barbara being shot by the Joker and basically says, yeah, I gave the Joker that idea. I was like, I've already been thinking about doing this. It would be so easy, like, So
he's egging Gordon on in the same way that Joker was, right?
Yeah.
Like he's like, come on, cross the line, man, come on, and but the thing is, you believe Riddler, right? Like there's a what's sincerity. There's the word to what he's saying, and even Gordon's reactions. This is where Garrett's just rules is the expressions here.
Oh yeah,
too.
And the overall like sort of palette as well, and the colors and the way that the backgrounds look is you feel like you're in Seven, like you feel like you're in a grimy murder crime story. The whole time.
It also made me want to watch the newest Batman movie.
Oh sure, yeah.
Because it not that the Riddlers are the same, but this Riddler is a lot closer to that version of Riddler.
Yeah, this feels like a merging of the two. It feels like it's got a lot of that movie Riddler, but a lot of sort of classic Riddler as his history. And that's when it starts getting into the flashbacks, where the other part of this issue is some of like Edward's like childhood, right, where he went to this posh private school where his father was the headmaster, and he was this wonderkind of a child who he like his father actually like spanks him with a book in this first flashback because he was the third highest in the recent test, and he didn't come first. That's it's like you weren't the perfect student, so therefore you're going to get punished. And
he makes him pick or he doesn't make him pick, but it's almost like the book that he picks. It's a Shakespeare, right? Because he says it's the Bard.
Yeah.
And so there's almost a psychological. It's more about the psychological than the physical, which is what I've always associated with the Riddler. So again, it's Tom King playing with that.
And
this is why the Riddler is the way he is.
Yeah, as we talk about these flashbacks as they come in, it does kind of, you start to see the shape of how this kind of influences his personality. And so right now we know that his father's really strict, and basically beats him if he doesn't do well, if he isn't exceptional in his class. Actually, one thing I noticed here about the art is it's really good. Obviously, this is not a critique, but the father here, I kept seeing Kurtwood Smith's face.
Bro, I read it in his voice. That's weird.
I was just seeing slightly older Kurtwood Smith from RoboCop, just with the mustache, and that's what I was seeing the entire time.
Man, we didn't talk about this at all before, guys.
No, we didn't.
The fact that you saw that as him, and I read it in Red Foreman's voice, because it's the names that he calls him too. Then I'm just like, man, this guy, no chill.
Yeah. I was never at that 70s show guy, so
that's fine. That's how I primarily know him, because I didn't grow up watching RoboCop. So then when I saw RoboCop finally, I was like, oh, Red Foreman's the bad guy. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So it's exceptionally well done. The father's screaming, "Are you the son of a whore?" as he spanks him with this book, and he's like, "No, father, I'm your son." Like, it's super. He's abusive both physically and mentally. This is like horrible parenting. And then we go to the funeral for the guy who died at the start, right? Yeah, Oates, his name is. And it's Bruce is at the funeral, and he ends up talking to the widow. And she's like, "Wait, Bruce Wayne, why are you here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I heard about what happened. I wanted to show up and show a bit of, whatever." And she ends up crying into his arm, and is she's breaking down. She's struggling with this.
Yeah, it's very much kind of, this is the type of Bruce that I like to see, because it's one that he's grappling with. It's not that he failed, right? It's that how he couldn't have ever predicted this.
Yeah,
but he still feels responsible for it.
Yeah, as we learn, part of Riddler's thing this time is that he always leaves clues and wants to almost tempt Batman to find him and figure it out. This was what Riddler can do when he doesn't do that. This is Riddler just out of the blue, randomly just doing something with no clues. So he could never have stopped this. This was completely sudden and just out of nowhere.
But he still feels responsible, and when he goes and talks with her, and she just leans into him, it was another Garrett's just nailing the composition, because it's just like when it goes black in the beginning. I just felt the emotion here. You get her, her sort of trying to talk about the reception and how there's a buffet and the sandwiches and stuff to have, and she's just talking about stuff that doesn't matter to try and ignore the pain, but then she breaks down. And again, this is so that Bruce sees the effect of what Riddler's done, and
really selling the idea that this is maybe going to ultimately what convinces Batman to cross some line, potentially later on, right? And I think it should always be potentially. It should never, like, I'm a little bit worried that some of these other one shots might actually be more explicit with it and just have him do stuff at the end.
I don't know, because I'm looking at some of the creative teams, and I think they have the restraint, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's good teams. Don't get me wrong, there is.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm not like, I'm not as worried as you are. But again, Tom King's done how many issues of Batman? So he kind of gets the whole Bruce Wayne.
About 100, give or take now.
Yeah, right. So he knows the Bruce Wayne mentality, and so I feel like that helped this one here.
Yeah. And we go to the other next flashback, which is Edward in school, and he gets upset with his teacher, who seems like a pretty chill guy, to be honest.
Yeah.
But he gets upset because he puts like a riddle at the end of his tests, and he says, "I can't possibly have learned this. This is why I lost a couple of points on that last test, is because there's this riddle at the end." And it's kind of a trick question, because it says, what is the most commonly misspelled word, or sorry, what is commonly spelled incorrectly in the English language? And the trick answer is incorrectly, because it's spelled incorrectly.
Right.
It's just a silly joke almost.
And Eddie says that it's enough, right? And he's upset that it was worth points and it should have been worth to him extra. And it should have been extra credit, because this is not something you could study for. And it's just, again, it's a peek into a mind of a broken boy, because like this teacher doesn't know he's getting beat with a book for not being number one on the test. So the teacher's just like, "Hey, Ed, you're fine, man. You do so well. Why are you so worried?" And it's just, again, it's a tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, right after this, where the teacher's like, "Oh no, this is just supposed to tease your brain and make you think differently." Edward goes back to his dad's office and pulls out his dad's gun and actually pulls the trigger in his head. It just happens to not be loaded. And then he bends over like he did before he gets spanked, and but there's no one there. He's just doing it on instinct. It's like this weird, sad thing. And then we cut to like some schmuck underwater, terrified for his life, who's then pulled out, and we just see the glove. Like, I love how this book doesn't like throw Batman in your face, like, and it really slowly teases him out, where you just see the glove, you just see a little bit of him here or there. He's in silhouette in the next full page spread. He's
fishing for sharks in the Gotham Harbor with a henchman, and I love it.
Yeah, he's questioning some henchmen. We get better context for who this is in the next couple of scenes. But then we see Riddler convinces the person in the next cell to kill himself. Like, we just get this brutal, violent thing where this guy stabbed himself in the neck. And like Riddler's just sort of in the next cell, just with a sort of looking over, just all and like Gordon's saying he still wants Riddler still wants to see Batman, and he won't talk to anyone but Batman. And I love how Batman's like on his way to Arkham, and as he's like traveling past people, he sees like a mugging happening. He doesn't even get out of the car. He just fires like a bind that takes the guy out, and that's it. And he just keeps driving. It's like, no, I don't have time for this. Like, there's bigger fish to fry right now. But he actually finds Riddler's father. I said he was on his way to Arkham. That was a lie. He's on his way to Riddler's father, who he's found in this little shack. And the art here is just, oh god, like Batman just in this moody sort of silhouette, but you can just see the logo in the chest. He goes up to the door, and we get the next flashback where Edward goes back to the teacher, and he wants to talk more about this riddle. And he's like, it shouldn't be worth points, that kind of thing. And the guy's like, look, this is all about, like, you need to loosen up a little bit. Not everything can be, just learned. You have to actually sort of adapt a little bit. And then we come back to Arkham, and Riddler, who apparently was nice enough to this guard before, when the guard's putting his tray of food into the slot, angles the tray up into the guy's hands, so it gets caught on the slot until his fingers get cut off. We actually get 3 panels on a 9-panel grid of like the fingers and the blood going down the tray of food until the fingers come. Wonderful.
It's so visceral too. Like Garrett's art there, because it's just, you can see the numerous times that the tray is going into the fingers until they're not there anymore. And it just, oh man, it made my skin crawl.
Yeah, it's really good stuff, and again, it's selling that Riddler is like just this vicious monster now. He's coming across, I guess, a little Hannibal Lecter in a sense that he could just do this at any moment's notice, despite how smart he is. So Batman's with Riddler's dad, who fires a shotgun at him. There's a great couple of panels where Batman's just dodging shotgun blasts with the flash of light coming from them, and he's here to talk about obviously Riddler, and he explains that basically he's disappointed that he became this character, this Riddler character. He was setting his son up to be on this path, but he basically went off and to play games instead, and it kind of sets this theme of breaking away from the strict regime to play games. And you can sort of almost see this forming here, where his dad was so strict that Riddler completely had to go the other way with all of his knowledge, and that's why he started doing what he did with all the riddles and playing with Batman and all that stuff. But yeah, this guy's just this old grump now. He's drinking in his shack. He's just kind of sad and pathetic.
I mean, for someone that was a headmaster at the most prestigious school in Gotham, he's fallen very, very far.
Yep. And of course, Batman's final question here is, who's the mother? Which is very important. And then we get the flashback back to where he's with his dad again. Yeah. So, in fact, it's basically he tricks him by telling him it was a fire, maybe even started a fire so that it was true. But he's there to cheat. He goes into the lockers that have all the test keys and stuff in them, and he sees what the riddle is, but he gets caught, of course, because the teacher, when he sees him, he's he changed the riddle at the last minute, so that means the only way he could have put down the answer to the previous riddle is if he had seen it and didn't even bother to read the fact that it changed. So it's this he tries to rig the game and it doesn't work very well. Before we get to that though, Jim Gordon wants to put a straitjacket on Riddler, and he wants all these SWAT team guys to hold him and put it on him. And Riddler starts naming all of the SWAT teams kids, and that he'll kill them all if any of them touch him. He's done being touched by anyone.
Yeah, and he says that I'm gonna get out. I get out every time. Yep. There's no bars that can hold me. And guess what? I'm coming to your house, and I'm going to his house. So, which then makes the guards shoot at each other.
Well, I think one guard tries to shoot at Riddler because we have to kill him because it's the only way to make sure there's no threat. And then the other guards try to stop it. It ends up just being this bloodbath. And it's just left with Gordon on his knees saying, Jesus Christ, as all these dead bodies are around him. And it really sets up this new idea that Riddler is becoming ultra powerful because everyone's scared that he'll just come after them if he wants to. And we find out that Batman's investigating and talking to the neighbor of Riddler's mother, because Riddler's mother's dead, and the neighbor's telling the story of she heard someone come to her door, and there was shouting, and then she went missing, and it turned out she was killed. We also find out she's a prostitute, and that she'd been doing that for many years, and that part of his father's strictness was him trying to atone for the fact that he had a child with a prostitute. He felt ashamed by that, so he was trying to beat him into shape and beat him into this this prodigy. So yeah, it's a super dark story. It's very sad. And Batman gets called with a bat signal to Gordon, and Gordon's like, yeah, Riddler's waiting for you in the basketball court at Arkham, and none of the guards want to bind him. Everyone's too scared to do anything with him. You're the only one who can do anything now. You have to go and see him. And you feel a lot of epicness here. I think the glow of light coming off the bat signal that's hitting Gordon's face is really strong, and again adds so much atmosphere. Everything's raining by this point. And then you get the scene where the teacher in the flashback is like, hey, you have to learn to you're doing all this hard work for your future, but then what? You have to learn to stop and just enjoy life and play a game once in a while, as he's throwing some basketballs at the hoops. And Riddler doesn't take this too well. Young Edward snaps and kicks the teacher in the back of the head, and then starts ramming his face into the ground until he's dead. It
is so brutal.
It is so brutal. It's his first victim. It is a big, crescendo moment. And you really, you get this idea that like all these things have been planted here by King for like the strict father who made him this intelligent, so that's why he's as smart as he is. But then you've got the idea that someone was trying to teach him the riddles. So his obsession with riddles is the thing that kind of like stumped him. Is kind of why it became his thing.
Yeah, it's why it becomes his fixation.
Yeah,
it's why he has to show that he's smarter than Batman. There's also a line where they talk about that he is smarter than Luthor and Mr. Terrific, and but it's these little gimmicks that has always lead to his downfall. So it also shows like that fixation is why, and without that fixation, look how dangerous he is.
Yeah, because that's his whole thing, is that he plays with Batman in the sense that he leaves Batman clues because he wants to see if Batman can figure it out, and he usually does. That's kind of the thing. He usually does figure it out. But so yeah, Batman arrives. So you get this nice transition from the basketball court of the flashback to the basketball court of the present day. And Riddler's actually, and this is the thing, if you told me before I read this, there's going to be a scene where Riddler's like shooting basketball hoops, I'd have been like, wait, what? But no, it makes complete sense at this point. It represents kind of like, this link back to his past now. And he's basically like, you know what, Batman, I could threaten to kill one of the Robins, maybe not even one of the boys, maybe Cassandra or Stephanie. Oh, and that's the other thing. He casually just drops a reference to the Wayne's murder, and he's like, yeah, of course I know. Of course I figured out that you're Bruce Wayne. Like, I'm a genius.
And it's not just that. It's like, yeah, you used to go to Wayne Manor and get into your safe. But not just the safe that, is in the wall, but the one that was in your room where you keep that messed up pearl. Or what's he called it? Like, basically, is he saying it's one of Martha's pearls?
Yeah.
That he picked up. And it's like, there's no way he could have known this without actually doing it, and it just adds to that creep factor even more.
Yeah. And Batman's in silhouette, and he doesn't want to believe it. He says lies and whatnot, and he threatens the Robins and the Batgirls, and then says, "But you know what? Like, you think they can take care of themselves? So how about this? How about anytime you ever touch me again in any way, for every time you touch me, I will kill a random innocent person, and that will be on you." And then, after this, Batman does grab him once here. He grabs him by the neck. And
that's where it starts to feel like the Killing Joke, because of the way that Batman's drawn, and you just see him, the hand slowly come into each frame, and Riddler's expression changes.
Yeah, he gets scared, but then Batman says no and lets him go. And Riddler starts gloating, like, see, I win in the end. Like, I'm going to always win here. So, yeah, basically, and he also confirms that he killed his mother. He said, yeah, like, one of my henchmen went to her as a prostitute and mentioned her, so that's how he found her. So he's the one that ended up killing her. And it was almost like Riddler, because he says he asked her the question of, like, who he is, and, why is he the way that he is? And it was in the moment before she could answer that he killed her, because he didn't want there to be an answer. Like, this is the one riddle he never wants solved, kind of thing, or maybe just can't handle being solved.
Yeah.
So he's done playing games. He's done. He played games with Batman for a long time. And like, I'm smarter than you. There's nothing you can do about it. And Batman gets angry. Like, there's children without a father because you wanted to make a point by killing that innocent person. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And he's like, the gate to the back of this place is open. I'm leaving, and no one's going to arrest me. And you get this sense as well, right after this, and obviously the art looks fantastic as he's walking away in the rain. It looks really good. This idea that Batman is powerless in this moment because there's nothing he can do. And it does. And I was kind of starting to think at this point, like, how do you solve how dangerous he is now without killing him? This idea that he will just start killing random innocent people if anyone does anything to him. And, from there you start to get, various things. Like, Bruce goes to see the widow of the dead guy again, and tries to tell her that he why Riddler killed him, to give her some sense of closure, and she's obviously upset. She's crying. Really smart bit of framing here. It's a 9-panel grid, and the middle. So Bruce is on the left panel, she's on the right panel, and in the middle panel is like the family portrait on the wall. So a lot of thoughts went into like how to frame this to kind of like always have it hanging over the conversation. So it's very good stuff. But yeah, so again, the themes of games come back into it. Talking about her daughter wanting to play soccer. She's like, it's just a game. She's like, no, it's just a game when you're watching it, but to me, when I'm there, it's not a game.
It's not. It's all real.
Yeah. And the bat signal's in the sky, and basically you get the sense that like everyone's scared. Like, the mob bosses are all saying Riddler's untouchable. The police don't touch Riddler. The banks have all agreed to just give him whatever he wants if he ever walks in and asks for anything, because he's basically just saying like, I will kill you or anyone you care about if you don't do what I want, if you harm me, if you say no to me. And it really sets us up. So the final scene of this whole issue, Batman's looking up at the signal, and the last panel of him looking up at the signal, which is a really nice little touch, because it's like it's dual panels of both Batman and Riddler looking up at the signal in the sky. And the last panel is Batman putting his head down as if he feels powerless and can't do anything, and Riddler looking up at the signal in this kind of almost gloaty kind of way. Apparently Max is just even surrendered to authorities because he's not a god anymore, because Riddler's like
because Riddler is well, and the other thing with the crime bosses, none of them were gonna play ball, but then all 5 of their wives ended up dead. Yeah,
that was the other thing.
And so so they're like, oh no, we're playing ball now, and it's like, oh my god, and now he's starting to go through the other rogues from Batman's gallery, and it's hooey.
And then the final scene is a POV scene from Riddler, where he's looking at the mirror, he's putting on his hat, and we're hearing from the phone. He's got like a camera bugged up and next to the bat signal, and it's Batman talking to Gordon. So, and it's been them having this conversation, talking about like everything he's doing, and Batman's like, he knows that I've got a witness for mercy, and I know he's bugged us. I know he's listening to us now. But then as it keeps going, he starts saying, he wouldn't question himself that he could change. That I would never let go of the reins that hold me back, kind of thing. And that was his mistake. He thinks he knows me. That was Batman's mistake as well. He thought he knew Riddler, and Riddler changed. Riddler became this more vicious, version. And the final page, which is exactly the same as that the end of that first scene, which is the first 5 panels have, the rest of the scene, and then the last 4 panels are black, is Riddler, looks down to pick up his hat once again, and it's becoming clear from like the live feed of the roof that it's actually a recording, and that it's not really happening right now, that Batman's outsmarted them. And when Riddler puts his hat on, he sees Batman standing behind him, and you sort of hear the recording playing. Batman saying, "Riddle me this, Edward. Though we meet once, but you know me forever thereafter. What am I?" And Riddler looks scared, and then the panels go to black, and that's the end of the book. This was a phenomenal issue, and this ending is perfect. Obviously I never want Batman to kill, but no. if the point of this is to explore what some of these villains do to push them that far, the idea that Riddler is effectively becoming a dictator of Gotham because everyone's too scared to touch him.
Yeah, and when you think about the real world stuff about how people rule through fear like that, where someone thinks they're untouchable, but if you can make other people feel that they're untouchable, then it's the same thing, right? Of them being actually. And so, but it takes someone to finally be like, well, I got nothing to lose, right? So that's where Batman's like, well, I got this. I can beat him. And yeah, man, when you realize it's a recording at the end, and that he's not on the rooftop, he's in the room. Man, it was so good.
Yeah, it's like straight up comeuppance as well, because the book starts with Riddler doing this to someone else, and it's like brutal and it's like unjust. and at the end the same thing happens to him, and it's this great moment. And you don't have to read it as he actually kills him. You can, I mean, even though the riddle at the end implies that it's going to be death, that's what the riddle's kind of getting at. Is I feel like, yeah, you can read this in different ways of like, no, Batman can still scare him. He is not untouchable. Right. Even if Batman himself has to just lock him up in a cage that is just like only the Bat family have got access to it, and like no one else can get to.
Hey, Robin's not using that secret prison anymore.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you can read it that way if you want. You can read it as this is what it finally takes to do it, but it does a great job of like making Riddler seem scary, and everyone is terrified of him. Yeah,
it's similar to that story that I can't find the name of. I was searching for it as we were talking, but there's a story with the Scarecrow that's very similar. There was 2 issues in a Detective Comics where someone challenges Scarecrow to be scary without using toxin, and he basically becomes a serial killer and gets Gotham to hold still for like a month, and until Batman can figure out what's his next move, because he's not using any gimmicks. So then you take someone like Riddler, who is smart, and you give him the no gimmicks thing, and it turns him into an actual like scary threat. Like you said, I didn't think about Hannibal Lecter until you brought that up, but it is very Hannibal Lecter. About doing things because he can. And then you have the whole tragic backstory that, he was a gifted kid, but he got pushed too hard in the wrong direction. Well, maybe if his dad had not pushed him as hard and let him, basically enjoy life and not have to be the best at everything, then, who knows what Riddler would have became.
Yeah, I mean, he was basically pushed to believe that like failure was not an option. You have to be the best at everything. There was no, the amount of stress that was put upon him is severe. So
yeah,
it's an interesting origin for him, and the story itself really sells him as this like scary villain, and the idea of like that this whole thing building up to the possible motivation for Batman to break his one rule. It's really well done. So
yeah, Garrett's art's too. So when it shifts between the flashback and it has that orange kind of sheen over all of it, I thought that was really cool because it contrasts with the dark part of what's going on. Also, the color green throughout because of Riddler's color scheme and whatever. Like that scene on the basketball court where it's just him and Batman and the whole thing looks green, has that shade on it. Man, it's so good. Him with the panda eyes and that he has going on the whole time, it just makes him look that much creepier. I don't know what it is about it, but yeah, man, this was an all-time Riddler story. And up to this point, my favorite Riddler stuff was the Paul Dini, him trying to turn a new leaf and become a private detective.
Oh yeah, I will say that this origin story does not work with that version of Riddler that tries to turn over a new leaf.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So, but I just want to point out that up till then, like, when you think of definitive Riddler stories, I really can't think of any. Right? I mean, spoilers for other stuff, but like he ends up being the reason that Hush happens, right? But it's not his story. But
no.
So there's not that one Riddler story. But I did enjoy the Paul Dini stuff, him trying to go straight and prove that he's smarter than Batman, and he has that chip on his shoulder. And here I feel like we have that definitive Riddler story now, whether it's continuity or not. If someone wants to understand the Riddler and why the Riddler is a scary villain in Gotham, when you have Joker running around, this Tom King and Mitch Gerads really did a good job of that.
Yeah, art's phenomenal. The way the story builds up and sets up, it really is a great one and done story of building up to this ending and kind of the point of it. And it's probably a very similar length to Killing Joke. All these will be, because Killing Joke's only about 60 pages, maybe 80 pages, something like that. It's not a super long story. So, no, fantastic. I was super into it. And the bar's been set quite high for these One Bad Day one shots now, because
for sure
we'll see if any can live up to this one or if this is the peak of them. But what are you giving One Bad Day the Riddler?
So I have no bad things to say about this, except that it took me 3 tries to read just because it was so long. And with that being said, this was a 10.
Yeah. Did I want to give it a 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll give it a 10.
Yeah, I really can't, like, if I wanted, like, there's not bad characterization. I feel Batman's handled really well.
Yeah,
I like all the Bruce stuff.
The only possible like minor critique I could even throw at it is, does it even make sense that no one else tried to kill him before potentially Batman did? Like, you know, surely someone could have snuck up behind him and just popped him in the back of the head.
Right. But when that's the whole thing, though. Yeah. If they feel he's untouchable, they don't want to deal with the consequences. You know, they don't know if he's got a crew of people. That's how I would, you know, rationalize all that.
Yeah, so, I know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's a reach. It's a reach for a critique because I don't really have any other ones.
Yeah.
So no, fantastic. The more Tom King and Mitch Gerrards in my life I can have,
like,
the better.
Yeah. So far between like now Human Target, Batman Killing Time, and now this Riddler special, Tom King's really, you know, man, Superwoman or Supergirl and Rorschach. Like, he's really been on an all-time run.
Yeah, Strange Adventures was overlapping that as well.
Yeah, Strange Adventures. So, like, we're going good. It's almost like we don't have to talk about that other book that no one likes to talk about. You know? So, but yeah, just let Tom King keep telling these type of stuff. Anytime Mitch wants to team with him, I'm here for it. And I hope enough people pre-ordered it that Mitch has to get that stupid tattoo. I haven't seen any updates, so maybe it didn't happen, but people should have read this book for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bad book. I imagine it'll be read fairly well, especially when it's when I don't know how they're going to collect them. Maybe because I mean, given that it's about 70 pages, and there's what 8 of these, I have to imagine there'll be 2 volumes, like maybe 4 each.
Yeah,
just to keep the size down a bit. But there you go, that is Batman One Bad Day, the Riddler issue 1. For something that I wasn't necessarily that pumped about when they announced it, this was a amazingly strong start for them.